Well, I heard mang-a-dang me. Okay. All right, whenever I'm ready? Okay. Oh, so do you have the, oh, one more thing. Hold on, I'm coming out. Do you have the chapters on, do you have the chapters on the screen?
What you mean? You didn't give me anything.
Oh, let me give you.
Just give me. You got paperwork?
I don't have it in paper yet.
I don't need the chapters.
Yet, but it might be helpful to have if you log into ACX, like, can we pull it up on Chrome?
Yeah, I don't have Chrome on here.
Oh, what is that?
Oh, this is
Okay.
Google.
So if we go to acx.com, that's
how. Oh, that's help. Here, there it is right there. Let's go to acx.com. Okay. Hold on a second. Go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Okay, so acx.com, and then I'm gonna do two things.
Because I don't need. You know what? It's not gonna do me no good because I can't. I gotta stay on this other screen.
The first thing I'm gonna do. Okay. Well, here I'll show you at least, and it might be helpful to see what I'm talking about.
All I need to hear is your voice and when you start and stop.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
And it might be helpful to see the chapters.
I can't see it while I'm recording.
True.
I can't have that screen up. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Password.
You forgot it? Capital?
Never.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me get my OTP. I'll read the OTP out. Can you type it in?
Oh, the OTP. Type your thing out?
Yeah. 762-278.
762-278. Enter?
Yeah. And then this is our introduction. This one right here. Oh, what happened to the cover? Oh, it wasn't the right thing. Anyway, this is our introduction book. And it should have all the chapters preloaded, so these are all the chapters I'm reading. And then, just in case, the actual words. Should I go to Drive? Where would I find this? Oh.
Not on my Drive.
It would be on. How would I do this? Oh, I'll just share it with you.
Yeah, that's my account.
Okay, hold on.
I don't think you need to share that with me, though.
I do.
To what? The chapters?
The chapters.
If you ain't got to print it out?
Go to Drive.
There you go. You don't have what Drive?
My Drive.
Oh, don't Google me. Don't sign me out.
I won't sign you out.
That's my Drive. You can't sign me out because I don't know my password. Do not sign me out.
I won't. I'll add a guest profile. There you go.
You make me nervous.
Amazon.com. Long password my mom sent that. I have like A!1. Alright, second OTP coming your way. Hold up. This time it's 026528. Here it is. Oh, check out the cover. And there it is. That's just this is the book.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now back to where you were.
Yeah, I gotta go to another page, what's it called?
That's all you.
You did. That's on you.
Best of. Okay. Oh my God, what is going on in the chat? Oh God. Okay. Oh, I was gone for 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what I was checking to see if the first chapter needed an intro or not. Because I think it says like title or something. So maybe I'll just start with the title. A Novel by Sydney Allen. What's that? You can text me too and I'll see your text. Am I ready? I see your flashlight. You can, if you're texting me, it's all good. Oh, there's 34 people in the live. Okay. Give me the signal to start. You can, oh, you know what? That'd be cool if you have do you have a click? No click. Okay. You can give me the flash, give me a thumbs up if I'm good. Is it recording? Do you want to give me like a 3, 2? Okay. Accolades, a novel by Sydney Allen. Written by Thomas Artenary, recap by David Christopher Da Vinci. Based on a true story because, of course, to accept this book is to publish defeat. Can you generate a picture of Angie Robles, 27, mysterious in a dark illuminated kitchen, cooking on the stovetop in a dorm room at night? With lights, modern, she's average height, dark, long, wavy hair, nerdy but in a very, very cool way. Her outfit is trendy but not excessive. She likely has books or paperwork or computers on the kitchen island, countertop with the bar stools. The kitchen should be detailed and well furnished with a few decorative magnets or artifacts. Chapter 1. You might know a friend of mine. We met a long time ago in college. Andrew is one of those great people you want to be around but don't see often. Andrew blends in perfectly with the stone walls and grass fields nestled in between buildings at the university. You always run into him outside, though, in passing. The grandeur of the university is what called you to take your first class there. Analysis of critical literature. The classroom, though, where you took your seat on the first day of the semester and sat your book bag comfortably in the middle of the lecture hall, settling into the atmosphere of the classroom, calls out to you from the plaza. Andrew, though he was listening, the semester has been transparent. What could you mean by saying transparent? Yes, of course, he replied. Yes, of course, you thought. You sat down underneath an oak tree about the same age as you are and adjusted your book comfortably to fit the small nook in the tree. Surely the comfort... I actually messed that one up. Can I do it again? Okay. You sat down underneath an oak tree about the same... Just start again? Okay. You sat down underneath an oak tree. That's where I'll start. Nice. Nice. Okay. Let me know. What could you mean by saying transparent? Yes, of course, he replied. Yes, of course, he thought. You sat down underneath an oak tree about the same age as you are and adjusted your back comfortably to fit the small nook in the tree. Surely the comfort wouldn't put you to sleep, though you were not ready to fight to be awake either. Andrew sat down next to you and leaned against his book bag. It was a quiet afternoon. It wasn't overly hot, and the grass on campus was awaiting the routine sprinkler system to patiently refresh its thirst. You would have to be gone by the time the system erupted, but now it was time to pry open a copy of your current read and study. Andrew motioned for a Gatorade and slipped out a read on World War I, recap by Thomas Artenary. He was a fluent reader of Artenary's novels, and it wasn't a shock that Battle Cry was already on page 147. You looked over to see the book in pristine condition, Andrew gently flipping to its current page. In light of this, you figured the next period in analysis you'd slip him a ruler he might like to use for his reading. After a little while, you folded the edges of recycled paper laminated and trimmed with Andrew's logo on it. Christine had designed the image and printed it for you, which you sewed on top of the material and stapled for Andrew.
Carefully, you gift-wrapped the ruler in small packaging, gold-plated and filled with decor. You gestured to Andrew that you had something for him and slipped him the package. Amazed, he opened it, dug through the paper, and removed the ruler. Once it was in his hands, Andrew smiled, first to himself, then to you, before saying thank you and wrapping his arms around you in a hug. You sat down in the analysis of critical literature, waiting for Professor Da Vinci to make his way from behind the desk, where he would wait until the class was attentive. Andrew was adjusting his sleeves, and Battlecry sat closed on his desk, marked with the graphic ruler you'd gifted him yesterday. He was ready to keep reading, and you were intrigued. Professor Da Vinci rose, and the class murmur settled. Da Vinci started. Pompeii. You lifted your head a bit, adjusting to see the screen. An ancient Rome. You loved when Da Vinci went on about civilizations, especially fallen ones. I'm curious to know, which is always dangerous, what we can recall from this time. You thought about Alexander the Great first, and King Henry VIII and his 6 wives. You thought about the attempts to spread religion in India, China, and Japan. Da Vinci, he motioned, and he waited. What gets me is Britain. Don't hurt yourself, he said quickly. He typed something on his computer, which appeared on the screen, and your eyes lit up. Andrew did the same. Da Vinci had been a fan of the campus resources, like the Grand Hall, so you made your way to the library at around 3:45 to dig through the ancient history's references. You started with the history on Pompeii, confused. The author never clearly stated whether their work was fiction. Carol Hurst was a well-known writer of the time, but you never finished her literature or attended any of her lectures. What confused you more was the history of Pompeii began with a picture. Though there was no picture on the cover, the first thing you saw was the grand marble pillars mid-destruction by oncoming ash, lava, and gravel rain hailing down from the sky above. Flipping to the first page, you realized what Da Vinci had said earlier. I wouldn't blame Anaya Robles for missing a day of class. I would ask to borrow her collection of paintbrushes and Tylenol. I wasn't in desperate need of the pills when I knocked on her dorm room, but I was happy she opened the door and invited me in. Robles had a fairly ordinary dorm room, and it was comfortable in that way. She was in the middle of writing something on her computer when you knocked, and she had figured you were looking for the aspirin. Robles often let you into her dorm room, and you were often there. It just so happened to be that I was also in need of some supplies. Angela Robles was her sister and best friend. She was well versed in practical things like cooking dinner and Ethiopian dishes. Angela was fixing a plate of spaghetti when you decided to give her a call. Hey, that's always a good way to start a conversation. Yeah, Angie replied. I was in the library earlier, digging around ancient histories. Sounds like you, Angie replied. You know that book on Pompeii? Anaya laughed. Of course she does. What about it? Robles was too busy making dinner to be bothered digging through her archives for Pompeii, but something had flashed across her mind that caused her to pause. Robles was thinking of Hawaii. A song was playing in the background on her television set that sounded like the Disney Channel. Robles was trying to ignore it, but it's pretty catchy. Anaya laughed again. I need to know, you started. You always do. Anaya motioned. Chapter 2. The Robles weren't huge on campus, and certainly not in the Grand Hall. Pause. Yeah. Okay. What? Too fast? Yeah, I heard it. Play it back? Yeah. Actually, no, it's okay. Okay. No, I agree. You want to do that chapter over again? All right, let's do it. We can go from do you want to go from Professor Da Vinci, or do you want to go from find a starting point, or play it back and we'll find a point. We can go from the top. Based on a true story. Can you generate a picture of Angie Robles, 27, mysterious, in a dark, illuminated kitchen, cooking on the stove top in a dorm room? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Accolades. A novel. I know. No, I have a drink. Five. Accolades. A novel by Sidney Allen. Accolades. Okay. All right. What's that? Maybe the title is stronger. Written by Sidney Allen. Accolades. Okay. Accolades. Written by Sidney Allen. Written by Thomas Artenary. Recapped by David Christopher Da Vinci. Based on a true story because, of course, to accept this book is to publish defeat. Can you generate a picture of Angie Robles? Wait, can I do that one more time? Because I kind of... I know, a novel by Sidney Allen. Okay. Accolades. A novel by Sidney Allen. Written by Thomas Artenary. Recapped by David Christopher Da Vinci. Based on a true story because, of course, to publish this book is to accept defeat. Can you generate a picture of Angie Robles, 27, mysterious, in a dark illuminated kitchen, cooking on a stove top in a dorm room at night with lights modern? She's average height, dark long wavy hair, nerdy but in a very, very cool way. Her outfit is trendy but not excessive. She likely has books or paperwork or computers on the kitchen island countertop. With bar stools, the kitchen should be detailed and well furnished, with a few decorative magnets or artifacts. Chapter 1. You might know a friend of mine. We met a long time ago in college. Andrew is one of those great people you want to be around but don't see often. Andrew blends in perfectly with the stone walls and grass fields nestled in between buildings at the university. You always run into him outside, though, in passing. The grandeur of the university is what called you to take your first class there, analysis of critical literature. The classroom, though, where you took your seat on the first day of the semester and sat your book bag comfortably in the middle of the lecture hall, settling into the atmosphere the classroom calls out to you from the plaza. Andrew, though he was listening, the semester has been transparent. What could you mean by saying transparent? Yes, of course, you thought. Yes, of course, he replied. You sat down underneath an oak tree about the same age as you are and adjusted your back comfortably to fit the small nook in the tree. Surely the comfort wouldn't put you to sleep, though you were not ready to fight to be awake either. Andrew sat down next to you and leaned against his book bag. It was a quiet afternoon. It wasn't overly hot, and the grass on campus was awaiting the routine sprinkler system to patiently refresh its thirst. You would have to be gone by the time the system erupted, but now it was time to pry open a copy of your current read and study. Andrew motioned for a Gatorade and slipped out a read on World War I, recapped by Thomas Artenary. He was a fluent reader of Artenary's novels, and it wasn't a shock that Battle Cry was already on page 147. He looked over to see the book in pristine condition. Andrew gently flipped to its current page. In light of this, you figured the next period in analysis you'd slip him a ruler he might like to use for his reading. After a little while, you folded the edges of a recycled paper laminated and trimmed with Andrew's logo on it. Christine had designed the image and printed it for you, which you sewed on top of the material and stapled for Andrew. Carefully, you gift-wrapped the ruler in small packaging, gold-plated and filled with decor. You gestured to Andrew that you had something for him and slipped him the package. Amazed, he opened it, dug through the paper, and removed the ruler. Once it was in his hands, Andrew smiled, first to himself, then to you before saying thank you and wrapping his arms around you in a hug. You sat down in analysis of critical literature and waited for Professor Da Vinci to make his way from behind the desk, where he would wait until the class was attentive. Andrew was adjusting his sleeves, and Battle Cry sat closed on his desk, marked with the graphic ruler you gifted him yesterday. He was ready to keep reading, and you were intrigued. Professor Da Vinci rose, and the class murmur settled down. Da Vinci started. Pompeii. You lifted your head a bit, adjusting to see the screen, and ancient Rome. You loved when Da Vinci went on about civilizations, especially fallen ones. I'm curious to know, which is always dangerous, what we can recall from this time. You thought about Alexander the Great first, then King Henry VIII and his 6 wives. You thought about his attempts to spread religion in India, China, and Japan. Da Vinci, you motioned. And he waited. What gets me is Britain. Don't hurt yourself, he said quickly. He typed something on his computer, which appeared on the screen, and your eyes lit up. Andrew did the same. Da Vinci had been a fan of the campus resources, like the Grand Hall, so you made your way to the library at around 3:45 to dig through the ancient history's references. You started with a history on Pompeii, confused. The author never clearly stated whether their work was fiction. Carol Hurst was a well-known writer of the time, but you'd never finished her literature or attended any of her lectures. What confused you more was that a history on Pompeii began with a picture, though there was no picture on the cover. The first thing you saw was the grand marble pillars mid-destruction by oncoming ash, lava, and gravel rain hailing down from the sky above. Flipping to the first page, you realized what Da Vinci had said earlier. I wouldn't blame Anaya Robles for missing a day of class. I would ask to borrow her collection of paintbrushes and Tylenol. I wasn't in desperate need of the pills when I knocked on her dorm room, but I was happy when she opened the door and invited me in. Robles had a fairly ordinary dorm room, and it was comfortable in that way. She was in the middle of writing something on her computer when you knocked and had figured you were looking for the aspirin. Robles often let you into her dorm room, and you were often there. It just so happened to be that I was also in need of some supplies. Angela Robles was her sister and best friend. She was well-versed in practical things like cooking dinner and Ethiopian dishes. Angela was fixing a plate of spaghetti when you decided to give her a call. Hey, that's always a good way to start a conversation. Yeah, Angie replied. I was in the library earlier, digging around ancient histories. Sounds like you, Angie replied. You know that book on Pompeii? And I laughed. Of course she does. What about it? Robles was too busy making dinner to be bothered digging through the archives for Pompeii, but something had flashed across her mind that caused her to pause. Robles was thinking of Hawaii. A song was playing in the background on her television set that sounded like the Disney Channel. Robles was trying to ignore it, but it's pretty catchy. And I laughed again. I need to know. You started. You always do, and I emotioned. Chapter 2. Got it. Do 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 do. Might have to add Foley. Chapter 2. Yep. Chapter 2. The Robles weren't huge on campus, and certainly not in the Grand Hall. And I would visit, but you never knew what she was reading. I think it had felt claustrophobic. Andrew was waiting by the door when you walked up. He was always glad to see you. You stepped into the library, graciously welcomed by the automatic doors, and found it to be quiet and cool. You wondered how books could be preserved in a freezer, like fossilized creatures. But relax, they patiently chilled on the shelves, unbothered. The librarian on call was Hannah Teller. She was pretty well versed in the hall's contents and reliable. Teller welcomed you inside. Hey, Hannah, you shouted. Diez, she replied. Buenos tardes. Andrew led the way. Should I do that over again? We can go from Diez. Okay. See you. Chapter 2. The Robles weren't huge on campus, and certainly not in the Grand Hall. Anaya would visit, but you never knew what she was reading. I think it had felt claustrophobic. Andrew was waiting by the door when you walked up. He was always glad to see you. You stepped into the library, graciously welcomed by the automatic doors, and found it to be quiet and cool. You wondered how books could be preserved in a freezer like fossilized creatures. But relax, they patiently chilled on the shelves, unbothered. The librarian on call was Hannah Teller. She was pretty well versed in the hall's contents and reliable. Teller welcomed you inside. Hey, Hannah, you shouted. Diez, she replied. Buenos tardes. Andrew led the way through the shelves, tiptoeing on the carpet and trying not to shuffle his shoes to create any friction. You were close behind. Hannah was watching from her computer and sat down once she thought you two would find what you were looking for. Andrew pulled a book, Greek, and you placed it in one arm. He reached over and slid out Britain's greatest battles, then Scottish territories, and finally film history, Queen Elizabeth, and handed them to you. You nestled yourselves in the shelves and flipped open Scottish territories, eager. Teller was lurking quietly, curious. The Scottish, you started. And the French, you hesitated. Andrew was calm. And the Romans, I don't get it. I missed a huge chunk of AP Euro, and filling in the gaps has been reason for all the aspirin. No, what I don't get is how Queen Elizabeth and the Brits are still in power. Andrew laughed a little. You're trying to say? Chapter. That is 3. Yep. Yep. Got it? 5. Chapter 3. You rushed into Da Vinci's class headstrong as per usual. Da Vinci was waiting patiently. He had his slides prepared. Da Vinci, you beckoned. The slides. From yesterday? He was smiling. You decided to take a seat. Da Vinci began. Pompeii fell, and now we hardly talk of it, right? Why did Pompeii fall? You raised your hand. A volcano erupted. Andrew poked his head up. A volcano erupted, Da Vinci replied. Andrew cocked his head to... Well, let me do that again. That's so dumb. Andrew cocked his head. We can go from a volcano erupted. Yeah, from there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, right there. That's good. Okay. No, that's good. Da Vinci began. Pompeii fell, and now we hardly talk of it, right? Why did Pompeii fall? You raised your hand. A volcano erupted? Andrew poked his head up. A volcano erupted, Da Vinci replied. Andrew? Andrew cocked his head. How is Battle Cry? Artineri is a great writer. He is, Da Vinci questioned. I mean, Pompeii's not even in this book. Da Vinci paused. He motioned toward his slides, which had a volcanic depiction of the eruption of Pompeii on it. He pressed a button to the next slide, which revealed the Roman Colosseum and the gladiator. Andrew sat up. Artineri's book did not have a chapter on Pompeii, but Andrew was curious about the gladiator and Da Vinci's slide. Who here has seen the movie? He questioned. You raised your hand. Alyssa, haven't we all? Da Vinci fell quiet. The thing I want you all to think about, he started, is not about Pompeii, and it is not about the volcano that decided to erase civilization in Pompeii. The class was listening. I want you to decide if the Roman Empire would still be standing today if none of us had read about it. You gasped. Andrew turned to face you, and Da Vinci relaxed his shoulders. The slides, you thought, of course. The professor was notorious for dropping hints at his upcoming lectures. You raised your hand, and Da Vinci motioned for you to ask your question. You turned your head to the side a little. Da Vinci, what about the fall of Britain? Chapter 4. I see. Chapter 4. Sure enough, it had been almost a year since Professor Da Vinci had a class worth teaching. Analysis of critical literature, Shakespeare thought about, and English composition were all his favorite subjects, but the students came and went at will. Da Vinci had approached Tana Teller one afternoon and asked, "How's the reorg going?" He meant the reorganization of the library. Teller smiled. "It's a blast." Da Vinci sat down to dig through the online archive and database. He scrolled for a moment before coming across section 285, Roman civilization. He walked over to the aisle and ran his fingers across the spines of the books. The grand hall had a well-kept selection, leather-bound, paperback, hardcover. Da Vinci's finger stopped at 285, Roman Civilization. He opened the cover and read. A great history of art the Catholics pursued, fine construction, glorious monuments, statues of marble, capsules, and tiled, hand-painted ceilings. This is an empire. His eyes slid across the images of Roman ceilings. They were beautiful. It would be remiss not to consider the impact of the Renaissance. Da Vinci closed the book. Teller poked her head around the corner. David? She asked. Yep. Yep. Going in. That was 4. Chapter 5. Hannah Teller, the librarian, was very familiar with David Christopher da Vinci. She had been pleasantly surprised to come across his Instagram and quickly followed, after they had already been in the same network on LinkedIn. Chris da Vinci was happy to see Hannah Teller in his following on Instagram, which was a satiric combination of writer's humor and her personal life. Hannah Teller's Instagram was as minimal as it gets. No videos, maybe one of her cat. Mostly landscapes and captions that said, one of those days where I feel like the clouds. Da Vinci always liked those ones. Hannah Teller had leaned over to Chris da Vinci. Where should I go? Maybe one of her cats. Mostly landscapes and captions that said, one of those days where I feel like the clouds. After that. Okay. Mostly landscapes and captions that said, one of those days where I feel like the clouds. Da Vinci always liked those ones. Hannah Teller leaned over to Chris da Vinci in motion. David, why are you investigating ancient histories? David paused. Did I tell you about Pompeii? He questioned. She lifted her glasses to meet him eye level, scooting the bridge up her nose. Hannah was curious that more students were in and out of ancient history section 285 this semester. Da Vinci had been there the most, but never ran into the other students. Teller, he quickly started. No, but I assume it's part of your quirky lecture on the Renaissance? Not exactly, David replied. Though David da Vinci did have a lecture planned on the significance of the Renaissance, he had come across something in ancient history, section 285, that he quickly added to his analysis lectures. It was a photograph of Pompeii. David reached into his pocket for his phone and motioned to show Hannah the image. She tilted her head sideways to adjust her view, and there it was. Pompeii? Okay. Hannah snarked. So it's a photo of Pompeii. Or what, like a drawing? Is it AI? Hannah joked. No, Hannah. Da Vinci was growing impatient. It's Pompeii. I wasn't in Anaya Robles' dorm room long this morning before her sister called. Anaya answered the phone. Hey, Angie. Angela Robles was cooking breakfast. Hey, is Alyssa there? Alyssa was sat on her dorm bed. You shut your chapter on the analysis textbook and picked up the phone. Hey, Alyssa, Angela started. You were curious where this was going. You mentioned Professor Da Vinci's lecture on the Pompeii the other day? Yeah. I was reading an article. I thought you might find it helpful. Da Vinci's been on about this Pompeii thing for a couple of weeks. I don't understand why he's so caught on it. Check your phone. You picked up your phone and saw Angie's text to an article on Pompeii's eruption. Angie, it doesn't make sense. Pompeii was erupted by a volcano, so what? So where is Da Vinci going with the Renaissance? You paused. David da Vinci hadn't even started his lecture on the Renaissance. He's probably going to bring up Dante's Inferno, you suggested. Probably, said Angie. My point is, why is our analysis professor so caught up on this volcano erupting? Angie started. You know what I think? You know what I was thinking of? Famous mountains, like Hawaii. It's an island made of a volcano, right? And when it erupted a few years ago, everyone evacuated. So that's not Pompeii. No, Alyssa, but why not? She was starting to sound like David da Vinci, the analysis of critical literature professor. I don't get it. David da Vinci shows one photo of a volcano erupting in Pompeii, and now we're involved in a scavenger hunt goose chase. You thought back to meeting Andrew at the library in Ancient History section 285. Why was Andrew even interested in that section? Da Vinci probably left him a note on canvas to bring me to ancient histories. I still don't get how Da Vinci's obsession with ancient Rome has anything to do with the analysis of critical literature. You've been reading the textbook, right? Angie suggested. I remember finding a section about ancient games. I thought, why include games in a literature textbook? Da Vinci just showed us the Gladiator Colosseum. What about the Greek Olympics? What about them? It's tradition, right? You hesitated. Angela was right. Right? So? Use your brain, she snarked. Why do I care about the Greek Olympics? The fact that they still happen every 4 years? Right. Now think back to Pompeii and ancient Rome. We all know the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But it didn't fall in a day either. In fact, it never fell. You finished. Exactly. Said Alyssa. So, what's Da Vinci care about the photograph if he's a literature professor? That's his day job, Alyssa. You're confused. Da Vinci's whole thing is about writing. Haven't you seen his Instagram? No. Da Vinci's onto something. Go figure. Exactly, said Alyssa again. I still don't get it. Professor David Christopher Da Vinci decides to teach an analysis of critical literature class to a bunch of university students that just so happen to be us. Why is he going batshit now? Think about it. Who is Professor David Christopher Da Vinci? Okay. Chapter 6. Okay. Chapter 6. You weren't much in the mood for solving mysteries when Alyssa had asked the question. You thought about her tone for a while. Who is Professor David Christopher Da Vinci? The question lingered and gave you chills. Shouldn't there be some billboard with Chris Da Vinci on it? Or some paper that should answer the question? Nothing on campus indicated that Chris Da Vinci was a hotshot, yet his enthusiasm about ancient Rome shocked you. You stopped by Da Vinci's office hours to check in with him. Hey, Chris. Alyssa, what's up? You know Auntie Robles? Sure, she thought. Your lecture on Pompeii was not quite for literature? No, I think she thought it was history. Sure, Da Vinci replied. It is. Okay, Da Vinci, but why included it in the slides? I mean, the photograph, said Da Vinci. Yeah, it's kind of off-putting, right? Who says that's not the point? You ask a lot of questions. You have a lot of answers. I don't get it. You paused. What caused the eruption on Pompeii? David Da Vinci reached for a small spiral notebook and handed it to you. Alyssa, you know Miss Teller, the librarian? Yes, of course. Hannah's the best. She mentioned you and Andrew had scoped the ancient history section 285. Sure. What did you find? Everything, but mostly Great Britain, Scottish territories, and film history. Film history, right? He stopped. Did you read them? You looked at the small spiral notebook and realized it was blank and yours to keep. No. So why, started David Da Vinci, take an analysis critical literature class? You were off-put and stepped back a little. It's not for the GE requirement to graduate. It's just an interesting class. This was the best answer you could come up with. Exactly. Da Vinci's answer surprised you. Do you know who else teaches this class? God, you thought. Hannah Teller? Miss Teller teaches an analysis class. Hannah Teller has taught every subject. You paused to think. Geology, geometry, geodes? No, smart one. Religion. Hannah Teller taught religious beliefs. Yes, said David Da Vinci. Long before you took this class. I don't get it. Why is she in the library and why does she look so young? You'll have to ask Miss Teller, said David Christopher Da Vinci, but sheepishly but confident. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer. You gently waited a few feet from Hannah's desk for her to look up and motion you over. When she did, you approached. Hey, Hannah, you began. Miss Teller. Hannah smiled. Alyssa, David Da Vinci was teaching about ancient Rome. Pompeii? Yeah, Pompeii. He said he used to teach that class. Sure I did, said Miss Teller, a few years now. Why aren't you teaching our class? Don't be rude, Alyssa. Her comment caught you off guard. Who says I'm not? Payroll? Yes, but payroll also says I get to organize books on shelves for you and Andrew and the professor, David Christopher Da Vinci, to investigate. The dean? Dean Kohlmeyer, sure, but they wouldn't mind if I had a class this summer. The district. Don't make me laugh, Alyssa. You hesitated. You. Bingo, Alyssa, on the money. Her humor amused you. I don't teach analysis on critical literature. Why not? You taught all those classes, geometry, geographics, geointelligence for toddlers, and did you ever take that class, Alyssa? I'm sure I would, maybe, but up until now you haven't. She was on to something. Teach it this summer and I'll take it. You motioned. No, said Hannah Teller, but I'll tell you what. You wanted to cut her off and suggest something, but Hannah continued. Alyssa, there's always one student in a class. One. To Professor Da Vinci, that student is you. Okay, you caught her drift. So, that's his whole thing. You never know how to end a question. You mean a sentence? No, I mean a question. David Da Vinci was going to ask you something, and I was supposed to answer? Yes, Alyssa. Your head was starting to spin, so you had to stop. Why Professor David Da Vinci? Why does he care? Hannah paused. He thinks you can solve his mystery, said Hannah Teller. Me, you thought. Yes, you, Hannah replied. What mystery? Yep, correct. Chapter 7. By the start of David Christopher Da Vinci's next lecture, you and Andrew had read through half the analysis text and bookmarked a slice through the bind. David Da Vinci could see Andrew's copy of Battle Cry comfortably placed on his desk, a small logo peeking off the side of the ruler. Did we finish this week's paper? Da Vinci asked the class, who responded with a few groans. You were wondering if he was going to bring up Pompeii in the photograph. Sure enough, Da Vinci reached over to his computer and came up the slides. You leaned closer. Da Vinci's slides showed only two pictures, Pompeii and the volcano's eruption. There was no words, which was odd compared to the rest of the lecture, which was mostly words. You couldn't understand why he was so mesmerized with this one photograph, the volcano. Alyssa, Da Vinci started. The volcano wiped out an entire village, so you're concerned about the people or what was lost? He paused. What did they miss? You know David Da Vinci is eccentric, but this is a new level of Nancy Drew he's on. Chris Da Vinci leaned over. What was lost, he repeated. You thought back to Andrew's chapters on Battle Cry. You began to wonder if the Romans of Pompeii had cried out when the volcano erupted. Did they know it was erupting? Did they know they were fated to become a part of history preserved in ash casings and museums? Da Vinci added, Alyssa, you've met Miss Hannah Teller in the library. Did you ask her about her classes? She said she doesn't teach them anymore. Students like me didn't take them. When she taught them, right? Yeah, but I couldn't. I was like 10. Alyssa, what did you think the people of Pompeii felt when the volcano erupted? Helpless. Da Vinci paused again. Were they helpless? David Christopher Da Vinci is quite the character, and you wanted so badly to answer his questions. Sure, Da Vinci, what is your point? Analysis of critical literature was first taught by Hannah Teller, but she asked me to lead the lecture this semester. It just so happened that you and Andrew Anthony Franklin are taking the course. We wanted to study literature, you added. And what happens, Alyssa, when literature is lost to history? Who says it is? You replied, it is bound to be. Da Vinci replied. But can you change fate? You thought back to David Da Vinci's assignment on literary research. You spent half an hour searching through Teller's library for historical context to support your paper's thesis. Writing can't be altered by historians. Da Vinci graded it 80 out of 100, and you wondered if he was being generous. Looking at him now, you realize he wasn't. David Da Vinci surprised you. He wasn't an unusual literary professor, and the other teachers on campus were well acquainted with him, but his behavior in the analysis class was raising some questions. Did Hannah Teller ever teach about Pompeii? Only once, I think. Da Vinci said, Does she know you're on some weird rabbit hole? We spoke, Alyssa. Yes, she knows. So I don't get it. Why are you so hung up on this? Da Vinci paused before giving his answer. Did you see the photograph? Alyssa looked up. David, was it real? You're the professor. Alyssa, I've asked that question to every class this semester and no one wants to answer it. Ask Andrew. Look, it's not that I'm upset or anything, but you can tell me if someone really took a photo of Pompeii while it was being destroyed. And so what if it was? What could have caused the volcano to erupt? You stepped back. David Da Vinci was quite the character, but you didn't take him to be so pushy. I mean to say, why is it that Pompeii was wiped out by a volcano? It became history to us. But say Hawaii and no one knows what to do. So what's your plan here, Da Vinci? Don't you have an analysis class to teach? Yes, and if you're doing the reading, you're fine. He paused again, but, you rolled your eyes. There's always a but. You want to know the why. This made more sense to you. You couldn't help but wonder if the rest of the class was as invested as you are in this goose chase. So why be concerned about ancient Rome if we're studying literature? Because what novel do you know that survived Pompeii? Chapter 8. It's true that neither you, nor Andrew, nor Professor Da Vinci, nor Hannah Teller, nor the Robles survived Pompeii, but you couldn't quite wrap your head around why it was such a big deal. Andrew's book Battle Cry never mentioned it, and you definitely didn't expect it to be so demanding in your literature class. No one seemed to be talking about it, which you found a little unsettling. After talking to Professor Da Vinci, though, something about it just seemed important. You realized Da Vinci was referring to the lost work of Pompeii, and not necessarily the volcano itself, but still. He was so concerned, it confused you. After all, if a volcano did destroy Pompeii and some computer recreated a photograph from the POV of someone who was there, so what? Computers do that. But David Christopher Da Vinci seemed to know that something was still off. And he was the one who put the picture in the slides. You wonder what was bothering him, the photograph or Pompeii itself. It was around 6 o'clock when you made your way into the Great Hall Library where Hannah Teller was cleaning. After digging through section 285, you sat down to think. No one could have stopped Pompeii, right? Is Da Vinci upset about that? Wouldn't someone have survived to tell the story? I mean, that's how we have the photograph, that's how we know. David Da Vinci was a literature professor, nothing more, so his fascination with ancient Rome was out of the blue. You didn't expect the next 6 weeks of lectures to be about ancient Egypt and Spanish colonization, and yet, the school's mission was on campus and you'd never visited. But David Da Vinci's incessant pry on history was making you curious. Da Vinci was late to class Saturday. You were curious waiting for him and Andrew didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't want to say anything. You sat for almost 15 minutes before an email was sent announcing that the class was dismissed. It wasn't from the TA, Aaron, so you were a bit skeptical until the class decided to leave altogether. Everyone got up, grabbed their bags, and left the room. You were walking out of the lecture hall looking around closely followed by Andrew, who wasn't really saying anything. Isn't this weird? You asked him. Out of the ordinary, maybe. He replied, which reassured you slightly, but not enough to excuse what was happening. David Da Vinci just didn't show up to analysis, and some cinder tells the class that they were dismissed for the day. No one was saying anything. You knocked on Anaya Robles' dorm room and waited for her to answer. After a few moments, you heard some movement on the other side of the door and leaned on one hip while she stumbled to the door. Robles twisted the knob and let you in. You phoned Angie Robles, and she was cooking asparagus. Angie, you started, while Anaya sat down on her bed. Da Vinci just didn't show up to class today? What? She laughed a little, which you didn't understand. You realized she thought you were overconcerned. Yeah, but where is he? Why do you care? She paused. Did you ask Hannah Teller? No, I didn't even think about it. Da Vinci's pretty reliable. He'll probably be back after the break. You realized it was spring break and relaxed a little. Anaya didn't seem to care much. She was doing something else on her laptop, spread out on the bed. Yeah, so this one is called Anne-Marie, and it's like right before chapter 9. Basically. But you'll notice that the chapter has a title for this one. Anne-Marie, the chapter in between. This particular university, famous for its great hall library, well-acclaimed professors, was resting calmly for the fall semester. The oak trees were releasing leaves in the breeze, and the students on campus passed by with ease. The dorms were clean, organized, and nearby, which felt reassuring. Students like the Robles, Alyssa Carter, and Andrew Hill were often exploring the campus crevices and found themselves in the library after analysis lectures' sudden end. Anne-Marie had wrapped up last night to make her way home. Though Anne-Marie's mornings were never that of waking up in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane, this particular morning she found herself looking outside of her window at the empty courtyard. Anne-Marie sighed. Though cockeyed and a bit confused, she turned around, slipped on her slippers, and made her way downstairs. This morning she would make a cup of tea, followed by toast and an egg for good measure. And this particular morning, Anne-Marie sat down with more force than she had sat yesterday, as though she fell a little faster or weighed a little more. And this to Anne-Marie was, after all, unusual. But persistent as Anne-Marie as she slipped on her slippers and ate her toast. Persistent was Anne-Marie as she took a shower, got dressed, and made her way outside to begin her day. She turned the key in her car's ignition, and the starter did its job. The engine coughed, and the exhaust fueled the atmosphere as Anne-Marie turned the wheel, and off she went. Persistent was Anne-Marie as she stopped at every stop sign. Persistent was the pedestrians as they took their time. And there was Anne-Marie behind the driver's wheel, impatiently curious as to how one could walk so slowly. But this particular day, Anne-Marie looked around her to find no traffic. At least not the kind of bumper-to-bumper traffic the suburbs normally have this time of day and this time of year. No, today the cars were slower and thinner than they normally are, gently orchestrated, an exhaustive engines and a choir of exhausted bodies. And to Anne-Marie this was incredibly strange. She would step on the gas, and the car in front of her would slow, and she'd move her head a little, peeking to the left, and the driver would do the same. Though they were peeking back at Anne-Marie, and never did the driver in front of her turn his head all the way around to face Anne-Marie, she still gripped the wheel a little tighter and stepped on the gas. At the signal on the corner of Mancus, Anne-Marie turned the phenomenon and stopped for a half-second longer than the Mercedes to her left. And Shirley had waited, though before Anne-Marie met the gaze of the driver of the shiny green Mercedes, they were off. And when Anne-Marie arrived at her destination, she looked around and realized how perfect the day was. The symphony of cars or people had been the ocean she was surfing, and only when the waves ceased did Anne-Marie realize she hadn't been going anywhere at all. She was simply surfing, and Anne-Marie took a second to think about this. The bizarre, quiet nature of this particular day, she wondered if tomorrow this phenomenon would continue. And tomorrow, Anne-Marie woke and sat by her windowsill and noticed that this particular tomorrow the air was quiet, the birds were chirping, and there was no traffic in the courtyard. And so Anne-Marie went downstairs and made her tea and took her shower and got in her car and drove to her destination and looked around and thought to herself. And in the end, that was all Anne-Marie wanted. And yesterday, how odd, Anne-Marie couldn't help thinking about the strange events of the cars that had passed by. She wasn't a great driver herself, but being far from campus, it was a helpful skill to have. Though she found herself lonely not being with the other students like Andrew Hill and Alyssa Carter, she was still exploring parts of the city like they would the campus. Yesterday, Anne-Marie drove to the ocean. She found herself faced with the same ocean Anne-Marie had seen a year ago, her freshman year. But there, in that moment, they met again. Surrounded by all the people, Anne-Marie was not alone at this ocean, and I'm sure she wished some of her classmates were there. She wasn't a year ago, and she wouldn't be tomorrow, and there was Anne-Marie. And she thought to herself, how nice it is to be alone. How nice. And for a moment, she took some time for herself. For a moment, she stood there. And then, for another moment, and another, and where did all the people go? But if Anne-Marie thought about it, the illusion would fade away. So for another moment, she stood at the ocean, and she was waiting. Well, she wasn't waiting. Well, Anne-Marie thought. Tomorrow, then, or a year ago, but no, here and now is just fine. But what about a year from now? No, here and now is just fine. And I wonder what she would do if she stood there at the ocean yesterday, a year ago, right now or tomorrow. And I wonder what he would do if he stood there at the ocean yesterday, a year ago, right now or tomorrow. Well, I can't say. Maybe I tried. No, not really there at the ocean. I was standing, I was sitting, and I was laying down my toes in the sand, and the waves didn't crash over my toes or my fingers or through my hair, but sometimes I could hear the waves rushing, crawling, slipping slowly drifting toward my toes. Anne-Marie would say, let them crash, and so they did. And for a moment they lingered. The waves, for a moment, they paused. Well, yesterday I walked back to the campfire at the ocean on the beach, and this particular campfire, as a particular campfire does, roared, ashed, flamed, sparked. This particular campfire, as a particular campfire does, flamed and flamed again. And again, I said to this campfire, stop it! And this particular campfire said to me, okay, and it did. And then I felt bad for scorning the campfire, so I apologized, and I said to the campfire, I'm sorry. And the campfire, well, there it was. And I'm not particularly interested in a campfire, though helpful as a campfire, polite as a campfire, responsive as a campfire. This particular campfire did not interest Anne-Marie at this moment. So when the campfire responded by hushing and relaxing its flame, all the other campfires did the same. And then yesterday, though, if you know, I and not Anne-Marie sat by this campfire for the rest of the evening. And the thing I love about a campfire is there it is, gentle, abrasive, and accurate. Like data, like numbers, like geometry, like fractions, decimals, like the ocean. And a campfire, you would think, is so hot it burns and scorches you, but it's unreasonable. And you thought this campfire is so good. There I was by this campfire reaching my hand out to touch it. And the wind, it would blow the campfire towards me, and then it'd put the campfire out, and I felt bad. The campfire, once it was out, it was gone. So for a moment, I turned to the wind and I said, why? And the campfire, the wind, said to me, I didn't mean to. And I said to the wind, I forgive you. And the wind, as a wind does, it carried on. And I said to the wind, carry on, and then the wind was gone. It hadn't bothered me much that Anne-Marie wished for the fire to burn, nor that she had caused the fire to go out. I only wish I was there to explain to her what was happening. And I Robles knew Anne-Marie as a friend of Andrew's. She had invited her to lunch on campus a few semesters ago, and Anne-Marie gladly accepted. Andrew said I should call you, Anne-Marie said. Yeah, I'm glad you did. Marie had known her from the study of microorganisms in modern biology class when Andrew wasn't there. Anaya Robles was nice to her, which she appreciated. She was going to sit next to her in biology, but Andrew and Anaya beat her to it. Robles had come up to her the next period and out of the blue said, I saw your lecture notes and I loved them. This was enough for Anne-Marie to like her instantly. Blue is for biology, everyone knows. If I had to guess, I'd write that Anne-Marie might muster the courage to mutter, and then, perhaps, another character might suggest, but, Anne-Marie, they start. You've come so far, and Anne-Marie might add, but what is it all for if there's not a story? And you might pause for a moment until our character says, this is what it is all for. And Anne-Marie would rest assured, reminded that this is what it is all. And Anne-Marie might rest assured, reminded that this is what it is all for. And Anne-Marie might step into her car, turn the key in the ignition, adjust the transmission to reverse, press down on the pedal, and roll backwards. Perhaps Anne-Marie might turn the wheel, illustrating her every move. But Anne-Marie is careful not to be observed. She might notice the green Mercedes correcting her moves and learn to glide alongside them carefully. And Anne-Marie might slowly decide to turn left, thinking about the bizarre accuracy of the Truman Show as she escapes the beach slowly and returns to her windowsill. When Anne-Marie parks in the garage driveway, and she might decide to step out of the car, look up to the sky, and thank the day for its patience with her. And Anne-Marie, at the end of this particularly very odd day, might climb into her bed, comforted, adjusted, and tonight alone. But if Anne-Marie were to mutter, in this age, what is it to sleep alone? Pause. What is it to think like this if not for the satisfaction of someone else? She would curl her toes and rest them against the sheets and sigh. Anne-Marie knows this is the beginning of change, impossible to predict, never. For if Anne-Marie woke up tomorrow to sit down and write at the very desk and computer which I am typing now, perhaps she might have something more noteworthy to excite the audience, the reader. The campus university was home to more than just a pristine library famously called the Grand Hall. It housed several buildings named after doctors, professors, and graduates from over the years. Emory New Ambition Hall was named after Lewis and Clark. The Leo Dormitory was named after Galileo Galilei. In 2003, the hall debated between a rebranding, Terence C. Franklin Hall, but the Franklin's kindly declined and kept its name as the Great Hall Library. Terence Franklin had achieved his baccalaureate and was a professor at the university in San Diego. Anaya Robles had phoned Anne-Marie in the middle of her relevant subjects lecture, loudly shouting on the phone, Anne-Marie, tell me you talked to Andrew. She hadn't. I haven't seen him all day. Anaya Robles was on the phone on the other side, freaking out. A week ago, Professor Da Vinci, who teaches analysis of critical literature, went missing and the class was dismissed. The librarian, Hannah Teller, let Anaya Robles know that Alyssa Carter and Andrew Hill were looking for him in Ancient History, section 285 of the hall, where he'd been finding materials for their lecture. Anne-Marie only knew part of a Pompeii escapade from what she'd heard from Anaya Robles and the occasional post on Instagram, but she didn't expect the teacher to be missing from his lecture. When Anaya spoke again, she said, It's worse than that. Anne-Marie held her breath. You know Alyssa Carter? I haven't seen her for like a day. She was supposed to pick up breakfast at Angie's but never showed. Alyssa would call if something were to come up, but Angie hasn't heard from her. No text, no post, no emails. Anaya Robles sounded like she was freaking out, and Anne-Marie didn't want her to freak out, so she tilted her head and whispered, Did Hannah say anything about where they might be? Field trip? No, I didn't even think to ask. And Anaya paused to think. They did just open that new building. Anne-Marie was sure she was talking about the administration's new office building, but the name didn't sound familiar. You said the professor is Da Vinci, right? He taught analysis? He's teaching analysis. And Teller used to teach that class, right? Like she taught the class, from what I know. I don't get what the whole Pompeii thing is. You both paused for a moment. Anne-Marie and Anaya Robles were starting to pack their things. They met in Anaya's dorm room and dug through Instagram to see what they could find. Anne-Marie didn't have a massive following on Instagram like Anaya Robles. I don't mean to say massive, but it was pretty substantial. Anaya Robles was waiting for her post for Anaya Robles was writing a post for her story when Can I do that again? Anne-Marie didn't have a massive following on Instagram. I could go back like two lines. Like right there. Yeah. Right there. I don't get what the whole Pompeii thing is. You both paused for a moment. Anne-Marie and Anaya Robles were starting to pack their things. They met in Anaya's dorm room and dug through Instagram to see what they could find. Anne-Marie didn't have a massive following on Instagram like Anaya Robles. I don't mean to say massive, but it was pretty substantial. Anaya Robles was writing a post for her story when Anne-Marie turned to her and said, "How are we supposed to find Alyssa if she's not answering anyone's calls?" Now, what gets me is she was just with Andrew. Not only that, Anne, the freaking professor is missing too. Chris Da Vinci? Analysis? You weren't sure whether or not to worry about the analysis professor's whereabouts, but couldn't help but feel bad nonetheless. The day was starting to get heavy, and Anaya looked stressed by the way she was leaning on the bed, digging through her computer. Anaya wasn't normally very eccentric, but she wasn't this focused either. Looking at her now, she was in a trance, which was unlike her. Anne-Marie was already on edge with her classes, her commute, and her trip to the ocean. She wasn't expecting to be sad about Alyssa Carter missing on campus, but she couldn't help but care that no one knew where she was. Anaya, you have a sister, right? Angela? Yeah, Anaya paused to think. Angie says that she had breakfast for Alyssa Carter and Andrew was supposed to come by with her before analysis. But they never showed. No, Anaya was getting more stressed. Angie said maybe they decided to ditch, but Da Vinci is gone too. It didn't make sense. Their class has been out for like a week now. Anne-Marie turned to look at Anaya Robles, who met her gaze. Professor David Christopher Da Vinci, who taught analysis of critical literature in the spring and fall, was not involved in ancient histories. The Franklins, who sported generous donations to the university, had agreed to sponsor the hall's remodeling, and incentive payments were provided every 5 years until the initial grant was completed. Ancient Histories was part of Section 285, not just in the corridor, but an entire building in the east wing of the library of the campus. David Da Vinci's office was in Building 285, where Hannah Teller had previously occupied before transferring to the library. Da Vinci had found Hannah's old notes on Pompeii, ancient Rome, which he only found fascinating after seeing a picture of Hannah in Rome a few semesters back. Teller told him something about being in Rome, David, you just have to see it. He thought this was sweet, but the odd description of Pompeii's devastating natural disaster, that is the volcano that erupted, seemed to stir him. Hannah seemed so calm talking about it, but stopped teaching the class the summer after her trip. She would tell him, "It's nothing to do with the students, it's just maybe I'm a better librarian than I am professor." Da Vinci refused to believe this. He loved listening to Teller and never took her class, which he now more than ever wanted to do. He took over analysis of critical lit after she transferred and wrote a section on Pompeii. But David Christopher Da Vinci made an odd discovery about the day Pompeii was lost. There was a photograph he found online. It showed Mount Vesuvius erupting, ash pouring down. No one looked panicked. They were just walking and sitting in the street. Da Vinci was put off by the photo. The more he looked, the worse it got. He couldn't make light of the image. But what got to him was the image itself. It looked real. Da Vinci showed the class in the analysis of critical literature the image, and they all had the same reaction. Andrew Hill even stopped reading his Battle Cries novel to observe the lecture. Alyssa Carter raised her hand. What about it? When David Da Vinci was nowhere to be found, the faculty hadn't mentioned his office was in pristine condition, minus one hole in the window. Alyssa Carter had a picture to Anaya Robles, who showed Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie didn't think anything of this picture, but seeing Anaya's concern, she stopped to think. That building freaks me out, Anne said. There's no chance Alyssa went looking for the professor, but after a week, I'm sure she wanted some answers. She should have just left a note. Okay, one sec.
That was number 9.
We're on 9.
That was 9.
That was technically 9, but I think it's called like Anne-Marie.
Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So that beginning was
What?
So that's Anne Marie?
Yeah. It's It is the 9th chapter, but it's like this story in between.
So what are you about? Because I gotta label it. What was
You can
that?
label. I would call it the chapter in between, but it's technically chapter 9.
So
But-
what are you about to do now?
Chapter 9.
Well, we got to call that something else.
Then it's called Anne-Marie. Funny.
That's called Anne-Marie?
Yep.
Hold on. One second. Anne-Marie, hold on. Anne-Marie. A-N-N-E?
A-N-N-M-A-R-I-E.
Oh, Anne-Marie. Annie. A-N-N-M-A-R-I-E.
That's her.
Oh, wait, I want to capitalize this. Anne-Marie.
Yep.
So that's what that's called. Now we're on chapter 9.
Yep.
Are you in the same position?
Yeah. Should I close the doors?
Yeah,
Chapter
of course.
9?
Of course.
Okay.
The doors were closed before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you just opened it.
Yeah, I just opened it.
Why was that so long?
I don't know.
Why was that so long?
It was actually a different story that I wrote that I put in
That's
it.
like almost 15 minutes.
I know.
How you gonna do that?
I don't know. I told you I wrote a novel.
Close both doors.
Closing. Okay. Yep. Five. Chapter 9. Professor one more time. Chapter 9. Professor Christopher da Vinci was fairly punctual. I'm sure Alyssa Carter knew this when she went looking for him. I couldn't wrap my head around why Andrew Hill was missing, but something had to be done to locate the 3 refugees. The last I heard about it, David Christopher da Vinci was driving home. Alyssa Carter and Andrew Hill should have just been on campus, but neither the Robles nor the administration could say that they'd seen them in the last 72 hours. Chris da Vinci was a well-dressed man. He motioned that a good sense of self is key to bravery. To face the world alone beside yourself, to remember who you are. David da Vinci was profound in that way, which excited him about teaching literature to the university. Alyssa Carter took that class with Andrew Hill because he'd read about the professor's ratings. Andrew knew that there was something special about the professor, and that Alyssa might also be interested in what he has to say. The beginning of their semester was all the same, and frankly, I'd imagine that they'd hoped for it to remain that way until the graduation. But part of Alyssa Carter and Anne-Marie, I'm sure, hoped something might be more interesting than the norm. Hill, I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. Should I do the whole thing? Okay. Chapter 9. Professor Christopher da Vinci was fairly punctual. I'm sure Alyssa Carter knew this when she went looking for him. I couldn't wrap my head around why Andrew Hill was missing, but something had to be done to locate the 3 refugees. The last I heard about it, David Christopher da Vinci was driving home. Alyssa Carter and Andrew Hill should have just been on campus, but neither the Robles nor the administration could say that they'd seen them in the last 72 hours. Chris da Vinci was a well-dressed man. He motioned that a good sense of self is key to your bravery. To face the world alone beside yourself is to remember who you are. David da Vinci was profound in that way, which excited him about teaching literature to the university. Alyssa Carter took the class with Andrew Hill because he'd read about the professor's ratings. Andrew knew there was something special about the professor, and that Alyssa might also be interested in what he has to say. The beginning of their semester was all the same, and frankly, I imagine they'd hoped for it to remain that way until graduation. But part of Alyssa Carter's and Anne-Marie, I'm sure, hoped something might be more interesting than the norm. The two had never even met, but Alyssa Carter and Anaya Robles were good friends, and Robles thought Anne-Marie might want to meet her. When Angie Robles had phoned Anaya Robles to see if Alyssa Carter and Andrew Hill were still coming up to pick up their breakfast, Anaya began to panic. She dialed Alyssa 6 times and spammed Andrew's phone. Neither Alyssa Carter nor Andrew Hill answered, and Anaya Robles was starting to freak out. She paced around her dorm before calling Hannah Teller, the librarian, who said she hadn't seen them. Hannah Teller knew that the analysis of critical literature had been dismissed for a little over a week, but wasn't really sure that Da Vinci, Carter, or Hill were anywhere to be found. Chris Da Vinci opened his Instagram DMs to write a note to Hannah Teller. He started, "Hannah." And by the time his thumb reached the H, Hannah was already in the chat waiting for his message. Da Vinci didn't pause, and continued, "You should know a little bit about what is happening." He debated on hitting send. Teller would read his message and start to look for Chris, but she kept typing. "The history on Pompeii has fascinated me as it did when you taught the class a few summers ago." He was sure Hannah Teller was anxiously waiting for his response, but he knows she's patient and kept typing. "I've never been to Rome." He reread the message and looked up from his computer. Chris Da Vinci was in row 38 on Delta Flight 3559. The in-plane Wi-Fi was helpful enough, and Chris Da Vinci hit send. Hannah Teller wasn't going to tell Anai Robles that she knew where David Christopher Da Vinci was. She wasn't going to tell the administration either. She peered over from her computer in the library, and her eyes walked around the shelves, the carpet, the windows, the students, the computers, before she leaned back into her desk. Teller stared at the message for moments at a time, reading and rereading Da Vinci's text. "Chris is a madman," she thought aloud. "Christopher Da Vinci is a madman," and she loved that about him. Hannah Teller decided to walk over to the library aisles and peek through a few books. "Enough of this Pompeii," she said, brushing past ancient histories. She had congratulated Alyssa Carter on checking out Queen Elizabeth and kept looking. Spanish, astronomy, flora. She was breezing past book after book, the occasional speck of dust flying off the cover and past her backside, dragging her finger along the shelves where no dust would cling to her finger until she found a comfortable position in front of Edgar Allan Poe. The library was home to dozens of Poe's work, and Hannah had read through a few. She slid her finger in between two copies and pulled the one to her left. She brought the book back to her desk, scanned the barcode, and checked it out. Chapter 10. Oh, sorry. Okay.